I was randomly pulled out of class, military school I'm attending, today. Which is highly unusual, since the general officers don't even interrupt coursework. Some guy in a suit talked to me and said he wanted to meet me face to face. It was a really weird interaction. The guy had a creepy, sleazy vibe. He wasn't a CIA operative and definitely wasn't a soldier. He never introduced himself and never said why he was talking to me. I think we all know why though. I'll try to get the rest of the stories up over the next week or two. Screenshot them if you want to keep them for reference. There is a possibility that they'll disappear at some point, it won't be by my doing. Part 3 is David's first interaction with an F. It was using them like a war club. I swear to God. Then it started to eat them. J. Afghanistan 2009 moments after Part 2. Whose turn is it? LTC Williams says, looking around the massive conference room. LT, I know you must have questions. We'll get to them soon. Fixing his gaze on me. David moves to the front of the room, snapping to attention. I think it's me, sir. LTC Williams tells him to stop being a smartass and to get started. David smiles and begins his story. There I was, just a young sergeant. It was the summer of 2001. I was on Team 177. They were much cooler than my current teammates. You know. Since we were MFF, military free fall. The room boos, as CPT Stone throws an empty can of Ripid at David's head. He continues with a smile. These guys were true warriors. I was pretty sure they would find Bin Laden by themselves. I was just a young sergeant, first team. I was in awe. I was invincible. He looks at me with understanding. Anyway, we'd been rolling out on missions for about 6 months. Afghanistan was the Wild West. Limited FOBs, and resupply was a bitch. We were all over the south, running reconnaissance. He uses his fingers to make quotations. We were in and out of Kandahar, which was absolutely overrun by Taliban fighters. Every recon turned into a tactical retreat. Well, after we dropped about 1 million pounds of ordnance, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, until the Hajis moved into the caves. We killed a lot of evil sons of bitches. The weird part was that it took them months to move into the caves. It was like they were afraid to go underground, even with predators, and before bombing them back to the Stone Age. They just stayed out in the open. Afghans aren't stupid. They come from a long lineage of fighters. They've been fighting for 2,000 years. They stopped Alexander the Great in his tracks. The Soviet Union, we got sick of fighting these fuckers. But, it was like they lost all tactical bearing. It took them months to move everyone underground and we didn't understand why. One day, we received a mission to reconnoiter a cave system east of Kandahar. We were told that some Taliban HVT, high-value target, was operating a cell on a system of caverns. Air support was unable to penetrate far enough underground to flush them out. We step off from a cop, traveling only at night. Iran hadn't snuck in many NVGs to the terrorist cells at that time, so we were able to move unimpeded. We followed the Arghandab River for a few days, setting up a patrol base a few clicks from the cave, sending 2 3-man teams out to establish LP/ops, listening, observation post, monitoring the movement in and out of the cave. One of the LP/op teams comes back one night, sprinting into the patrol base, muttering Rangers, the running password. David looks at me and says, "Don't get any ideas. It wasn't you slack-jaws. It was the baseball team," he said with a grin. He pauses to collect his thoughts and starts again, looking back at the room. So, the 3-man team runs into the patrol base. They look like they've just seen a ghost. Jay, one of the bravos, says it was fucking eating them. He is breathing heavily and panicked. I ask, "What are you talking about? Calm down." Jay takes a few deep breaths and throws some dip in his bottom lip, then starts again. For 48 hours, we watched Hajis, armed with AKs and RPGs, go in and out of the cave. There must have been 50 total. A few hours ago, the cave suddenly sounds like it's the 4th of fucking July. We see the Hajis sprinting out of the cave, screaming, stumbling over each other, scared to death man. Suddenly, there is a loud roar. I swear to God, I felt the ground shake as this thing moved. He paused to spit. This thing. It comes out of the cave and is just annihilating the Hajis. It must have been 3 times their size. It's ripping through them like butter. It sideswipes a group of them with its arm, knocking them against the wall. It grabs a Haji in each hand and squeezes. Their bodies explode, heads popping from the force. I swear I could hear their bones break from our position 200 meters away. It grabs one of the fighters, their rebounds per game shooting straight up, snaking off into the distance. It uses the man as a fucking war club. I swear to God. It smashes the fighter's body against half a dozen men, before biting him in half and swallowing. The 10 Hajis that were left, sprinted out of the cave and into the forests. I'm pretty sure they're still running. CPT Holmes, the team captain, looks Jay in the eyes, waiting for him to say it was all a joke. Nothing. Jay stares back at us, eyes completely glazed over. The other 2 witnesses nod in unison to confirm Jay's story. CPT Holmes stands up, walking away with his radio, speaking to higher, who inform us to maintain our current position and wait for direction. A couple hours later, CPT Holmes informs us that we're heading to the cave. We're to kill anyone and anything in there. Jay, completely out of character, yells at the captain, "Are you fucking serious? It took down 50 men like it was killing ants." CPT Holmes nods understandingly, only saying we leave in 20. David pauses like he's catching something in his throat and starts again. We leave our rucks at the patrol base, camouflaging them the best we can, then head out into darkness. We walk, using our nods, because it's fucking pitch black on the mountain. A green haze replaces the darkness. The trees and fallen logs look like shadows. The entire movement, all I can think about, is becoming food for some unknown beast. NVGs and lack of sleep makes me hallucinate the entire trip. Everyone in the room nods, because we've all been there. Every fucking tree looks like a huge creature. Every branch looks like an arm reaching for me. We walk down the mountain, Jay leading us to the other LP/op team's position. We find nothing but blood, weapons, and casings. I take point and step into the mouth of the cave, which must be 30 feet tall. We flip our nods up on their mounts, and turn on our surefire flashlights, since there wasn't enough ambient light in the cave for the NVGs to be effective. This cave is absolutely massive. We're in a full wedge formation, spread out 60 meters total, and still have room on either side. We step over the arms, legs, and torsos of dead Hajis. As we move, I can hear the slosh of pooled blood under my feet. Bones crunch as we step, heel to toe. We see tables and communication gear, all within a couple hundred meters of the cave opening. The Hajis were afraid to go deeper. Yet, our dumbasses were doing just that. We continue walking for at least an hour, before the smell overcomes us. It smells like corpses and shit. He looks at us, as we nod in unison. He has stares in his eyes and starts again. You'll never forget the first time you feel that fear. It comes over you like a tidal wave, moving from head to toe, until your body stops working. I instantly know something is wrong. I try to tell the team to halt, but nothing comes out of my mouth. We instinctively pull in tighter and face outward, our flashlight starting back and forth against the pitch-black walls. I see the ridges of these ancient caves and giant stalagmites. Suddenly, what I think is a wall, begins to move. My flashlight catches this enormous beast. It looks like a man, but it's at least 15 feet tall. Its head and hands look disproportionate to its body. Absolutely massive, it slowly turns its head at me, peeking around a cavern wall, its eyes glowing unnaturally from my flashlight. Smiling, it speaks in ancient Hebrew. Israelite. I hate has chosen, with the most menacing look on its face. The evil is nothing you can see on a human, no matter how terrible they are. It bends down and flicks me. I swear to God it flicks me like a human would flick a bug. The blow knocks me backward and against a wall, the creature laughing so loud that the cavern shakes. The team opens up on the beast. He pauses, as I can hear the regret in David's voice. We are totally unprepared. The entire team shoots center mass. I mean, That's what we are taught our entire lives. It does absolutely nothing. The creature grabs CPT Holmes and throws him against the wall, killing him instantly. It bites down on Jay's neck, snapping his head off in its mouth. Jay's headless body slumps to the floor. Blood pours down its lips, smiling while it chews. It looks at me and says, "Having fun yet, Jew? Where's your god now?" One by one, the team falls. I'm the last one standing, having expended all of my ammo. I fall to my knees and begin to pray. The ground shakes as it slowly walks toward me, chewing on one of my teammates' arms. The beast is taking its time. It's taunting me. The thing picks me up around the torso, breaking 3 of my ribs, and bringing me to eye level. It then says, "I will let you live, because you are weak and useless. You who are made in your God's image. You will remember me when you sleep and you will seek death." It then tosses me to the floor, knocking the wind out of me. The beast gathers what's left of my team and walks deeper into the cavern. I scream for it to kill me. It just laughs maniacally and disappears into the dark. I spent the next 6 hours, walking back to the patrol base. I was finally picked up by a medevac chopper. You know the rest. CIA agents are on board and don't let my story see the light of day. They threaten me with prison time and death. All that I wanted was to get onto another team to avenge my brothers. Now I'm here, 5 years later, with you assholes. And I did avenge my team. We avenged my team. For that, I thank you. I'm going to have a smoke now. Afghanistan 2009 Task Force M.K.O.P. Exodus. This thing was massive. It was at least 50 feet tall. Its wings spread, filling up the cavern. Its voice shook the ground. My Marines went crazy and started killing each other. The conference room I sat in had 37 chairs, each with a different nameplate. I didn't recognize the names. They sounded like ancient Hebrew. LTC Williams said, "Welcome to Task Force M. We research and kill the enemies of mankind, those things that hide in the shadows, that campfire stories were created about. From now on, you'll be referred to as Ben-Ania, Ben for short. Never use real names when referring to task force members. We don't know who to trust. The last man to hold your seat died in a most terrible manner. But, he did so while saving his brothers. His memory and contributions to the safety of humanity will not be forgotten." The dozen operators seated, pounded the table 3 times in unison. LTC Williams told David to give me the tour of FOB Exodus, as he went back to briefing the rest of the team. David hit my shoulder, smiling in excitement, as he took me out of the conference room. There are 4 wings connected to the conference room within COP Exodus. Each represents an evil that our task force has encountered. Each is used to research and teach about those entities. The end state is to figure out how to kill them effectively and figure out what their plans are for humanity. Generally, 2 TFM members are responsible for each wing. Wing 1 is all about the big guys. That giant that you helped take down was one of them. We believe they're Nephilim more refined. Keep in mind that everything we learn is theory. We base it on first-hand accounts, scripture, and other ancient texts and legends. All seem to contain stories of the giants. It's hard to prove these things are what we believe, because they're not exactly easy to have a conversation with, he said with a chuckle. Ira, the Israeli commando, and I are in charge of this wing. Mainly because we can both read and understand ancient Hebrew and translate early scripture and texts. I was the one that saved you from that abomination. It was not a dream. Your soul was in Sheol for a brief time, before I lifted you from that purgatory. You're sorry for the extended delay in posting part 5. I've been to hell and back. I was pulled out of my military class 5 months ago by the same man that visited me before. He clearly has some clout, because no instructors, in the school, even questioned his motives. I can't explain how difficult it is to walk into a building full of 1,200 U.S. military captains and majors, and just walk out the front door with one of them. He must work within the government and must have some serious connections. I knew what was happening but also knew that he was likely looking for information about Task Force M, TFM. I knew that I would be admitting guilt if I fought him. So, I went along. The experience was not a fun one. January to June 2019. I'm John Smith. I just have a few questions for you, the man said with a devilish grin, as he led me out of the classroom. Okay, I'm an open book. What would you like to know, sir? I said, ensuring my voice didn't waver and that I didn't show any outward evidence of my heightened awareness of danger. My sixth sense was now trickling up my neck, hairs standing on end, and chills cascading through my body. This guy radiated evil. He looked at me, with his sleazy smile, and $5,000 suit, and said all will be understood in good time. I could see the evil behind his eyes. This man was a predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I knew from the moment that we made eye contact, that I was either going to end up in a body bag, or that I would have to convince this scum that I was on his side. I waved at the security guards as we left the building. The nice thing about getting shot at for a living is that you learn how to keep your composure in dangerous situations. I wasn't about to show this man any fear or weakness. He walked me to a large, black van, which was parked near the front entrance to the building. 4 guys jumped out and ushered me into the back seat. They were his security team, but they looked more like goons than soldiers. All 4 were very large men and had matching tattoos on the left side of their necks. It appeared to be a triangle or pyramid. If you're in a profession that practices violence for long enough, you learn how to size people up quickly. These guys were highly trained, likely former special forces, and clearly not American, based on their accents. The driver started the van and we began moving toward the main gate on post. My captors pretended to be friendly, making small talk, and avoiding my questions. As soon as we were off post, they changed. The large, bald-headed bastard next to me, elbowed me in the face. The others put zip ties on my wrists and ankles and threw a black hood over my head. One of them then stuck me with something in the neck and I passed out instantly. I woke up in a pitch-black, 6x6, room. No toilet, no bed, no freedom. I couldn't even see my hand inches from my face. Well, fuck, I said aloud. I began to feel along the wall and floor for any possible escape. Nothing. The walls felt somewhat like glass, but the texture seemed to move and ripple with the motion of my hands. It was like moving your hand along the top of water. But the wall behind was much too firm for that. It didn't budge when I shouldered it and I was unable to find a door anywhere along the wall. I decided to lay on the floor and think through my situation. I began to think of my wife and mom but pushed them out of my mind immediately. Seriously, survive, evade, resist, escape, taught me to concentrate on the moment and not allow my beautiful memories to break me. Those memories can be utilized to stay alive, but you should not dwell on them, or they will likely do the opposite. The sooner you accept that you're dead, the better off you will be. That acceptance makes it easier to fight. I began to think through the situation in my mind, deciding how to present myself to my captors. I knew this was likely about Task Force M, TFM, and knew that my captors were not fans. Do I carry myself in my usual manner? Confident, strong-willed, and dangerous? The advantage to this is, if they know anything about me, which they likely do, they'll be confident that I'm not hiding my true self. Or do I pretend to be a pushover and passive, making them feel superior, and making them doubt my capability to serve on TFM? I decided to blend the two, displaying my true personality, but dumbing down my knowledge and intelligence. L.T.C. Williams once told me a blunt object is much less dangerous than a well-informed warrior. So, I became the blunt object. You need to understand that I was being drugged for the rest of my time in this compound. I believe they were using 3 drugs. The first was a sort of truth serum, which didn't seem to affect me. The second was meant to break me by causing incredible pain. The third was some sort of hallucinogenic, which caused visual and auditory hallucinations. I believe I was able to sort through what was real and what wasn't, based on my ability to feel physical touch. But I have no way to support my claims and no way to know if the drugs affected me more than I realize. Maybe you can help me sort through the past 5 months. Suddenly I heard a loud bang and a whooshing sound. It didn't sound mechanical. More like magnets moving something. as if the walls being moved were not physically touched in the process. Bright, red lights flashed on. I was standing in the middle of a giant room, half a mile long, and 150 feet high. I had not left my prison cell, but I was somehow no longer standing in it. There was no evidence of where the walls and ceiling had gone. Cubes, like the one I was being held in, were littered throughout the room. They seemed to contain absolute darkness. The red lighting seemed to crawl around them, blotted out by the black within. It was clear that, if there were occupants in them, they could neither hear, nor see me. The red lights flooded the entire room, making it appear to be soaked in blood. A foul stench was in the air, like blood, shit, and vinegar mixed together. The feeling of absolute evil surrounded me. It was almost enough for me to immediately crack. I felt like I was somewhere that no human is meant to see. I slowly turned in a circle, scanning the room, and realizing that I was surrounded by at least 24 guards. They were wearing all black, with gear resembling that of elite special forces, SF, units. They had ballistic helmets, plate carrier vests, and additional protection up and down their legs. All wore ballistic masks. Some had painted the masks to appear as skeletons. Some painted their masks to look like devils. All seemed happy to be there. I could sense that they were giddy to begin torturing me. John Smith stood in front of me. He still had the same $5,000 pinstripe suit on. He was around 5'9", with pale, white skin, and a slightly plump body. He had the scariest fucking grin and kept licking his lips, like he was looking at a steak. He was flanked by two huge men. Each had to be at least 6'8". Both had long, black cloaks on. They reminded me of Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. I started to think that I must really be tripping balls, when I noticed the weapons in their hands. They looked like long swords, but the blade appeared to contain a black liquid that slushed back and forth, acting as if it had a life of its own. A plume of black smoke was emanating from the weapons, seemingly dancing toward their leader. Fear. They're putting on a show to break me, I thought to myself. I rattled off my name, rank, serial number, and birthday. That's what all soldiers are trained to say when interrogated. "Cut the shit, Mike," John said. "I'll make this easy on you if you tell us what you know. Where is Task Force M?" He was clearly enjoying this. He remained motionless, but his eyes had an air of delight to them. "I'll do one better, why is TFM?" I responded, smiling like I was clever. Apparently, he wasn't fond of Drax references, because pain suddenly electrified my body, dropping me to the floor. I was hit with the most intense pain imaginable. It felt like my skin was melting and my blood would boil through my pores. My head felt like it was going to pop, and my internal organs felt as if they were being slowly ripped apart. I heard a hum, then a click, and the pain stopped. I rose from my knees, glancing down to ensure my body was still intact. I went back to attention and stared John in the eye, pretending that I wasn't impressed by the torture. "Remember, you're a big dumb ape," I thought to myself. "What do you want?" I said, playing dumb. "Where am I? People are waiting for me." "Kidnapping the U.S. Army major is probably not a great id," he interrupted. "You're in hell. My hell. I'm the king of this place, and I'm protected by my demons." His security team all yelled in unison as I was dropped by the intense, fiery pain again. "You're going to tell us what you know, or you'll never get out of here." "I'm not afraid of death, but I also don't have anything to hide," I said, bracing for the next blast of pain. "I won't say anything that puts my rangers at harm though," I yelled. I was concentrating on my life as a ranger, not my life within TFM. Always stick to a half-truth if you're ever in captivity. It makes it much easier to layer lies. "I don't care about your rangers, and you will tell me everything you know about TFM," he said calmly. "I've always had this gift. Or curse, depending how you look at it. Only 3 people know about it, my wife, mom, and aunt. Since I was a teenager, I've been able to look into people's eyes and know what type of person they are. Generally, the dominating force in their life shows through. I'm not telepathic or empathic. I can just see who person is. I see what good or evil is the dominating force in their life. I've seen a bit of everything in the eyes of others: violence, apathy, greed, pedophilia, bigots, occultists. The ability is so intense and disheartening, that I often avoid looking people in their eyes. It's exhausting seeing so much evil and so little good. John's eyes were like nothing I'd ever seen. They didn't look human. The physical eyes were those of a normal human. But what lay behind the eyes was demonic. I was looking at the ultimate predator, one that did not see people as anything more than ants. A creature that has no capacity to do good. I was falling to my knees in despair on the inside. The dread, fear, and evil he emanated was much worse than that of the giants. This being could break humans by simply standing in their presence. I decided that if I was going to die, I might as well put up a fight. I rushed the guard nearest to me, narrowly avoiding the asp that he swung at my head. I grabbed his wrist and torqued it to the left, slamming him to the ground. I got in a few punches to his throat, which was the only place without body armor, prior to being dropped with the boiling sensation again. I noticed that the guard had a patch on his right arm. The red lighting made it difficult to see clearly, but it appeared to be the all-seeing eye. The pyramid was surrounded by the letters O, N, W. "Bring back his cage," John said. "Let him marinate for a few days." To my astonishment, my cage seemed to come directly out of the ground. Nothing appeared to be moving the walls or ceiling. They simply floated into position and formed around me. The walls looked clear, except for the liquid pulsating inside. The liquid looked like black ink, bouncing rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The walls and ceiling slammed shut around me, trapping me in eternal darkness again. I tried to yell and pound the walls, but it sounded like I was underwater. No one was going to hear me, and the walls felt harder than steel. Then they started the fucking noises. I think the noises rotated every 12 hours, but I'm not sure, since there was no way to gauge time. At first, they played a high-pitched, shrieking sound, like nails on a chalkboard. This seemed to go on endlessly. It was so intense that my eardrums felt as if they'd explode. Next was the sound of babies crying in agony. It sounded as if they were being tortured, mixed in with cries of neglect. The final sound that was rotated in was that of puppies being tortured. I'm not going to lie. That one fucked me up. I lay on the ground and tried to put my fingers in my ears, but the sounds were too deafening. So, I tried to create a pattern of the noises in my mind. Instead of hearing puppies crying, I'd try to come up with rhythms, and think of the syllables in the sounds. That seemed to give me a microscopic bit of peace. Then the crazy shit started to happen. The music suddenly cut out and my prison cell became illuminated. The light grew so powerful that I had to cover my eyes with my forearm. A massive figure was suddenly standing before me. It was as if the ceiling to my cell was suddenly pushed higher to accommodate this giant, humanoid figure. I stood up, my head barely eclipsing this thing's torso. He must have been 10 to 12 feet tall, wearing a white robe, with a silver breastplate, and silver armor along his shins and arms. His armor was adorned with gold symbols that seemed to pulsate with each breath. He had a massive sword that was sheathed by his right side. He looked Persian, with curly, black hair, a large, well-groomed beard, and olive skin. He was ripped, but wasn't as bulky as the giants I had fought. It looked like he was built for speed and power. Essentially, he looked like the ideal soldier. Light seemed to radiate from his body, which was especially bright above his head. White wings were furled behind his back. He shook them gently, as a bird does after flight. Still in fight mode, I looked into his bright, blue eyes, as I gained the courage to say, "It isn't going to be pretty, but I'll make you work for my death, clearly lie." The being chuckled a bit and his booming voice said, "You'll have no fight from me, Ranger. In fact, we've fought side by side in many battles." I looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Do you not remember me?" he said. "I was the one that saved you from that abomination. It was not a dream, your soul was in Sheol for a brief time, before I lifted you from that purgatory. The dream I had, after killing my first giant, rushed back to me. I tried to crack a small smile and said thanks for that. That giant seemed a bit pissed at me. He boomed the loudest, most affectionate laugh that I've ever heard. and said, "My name is Yura, and I've been with you since before you were born. I protected you while you grew and fought by your side, even when you couldn't see me. Your fight is not over, in this world, or the next, as long as you hold firm to your faith." I began to ask what he meant by this world, or the next, but he stopped me. He took a knee, resting his hand on my shoulder. The weight of his hand caused me to lean to that side. He looked me in the eye with an expression of mourning. "You will one day, as a brother, lead me in battle. But I can't take you out of here. The I Am desires that you experience your time here, for it will provide you the strength you need in future fights. He is always with you, as am I. Do not bend to the captor's will. Many souls depend on you." I glanced to Yura's arm, where I noticed a long gash. The meat was pulled apart and blood was slowly trickling down his wrist. When I looked back to him, he was gone. The room quickly turned pitch black. Alarms suddenly sounded, as the walls to my cell folded into the ground, and I was spilled back into the large room, illuminated by the red lights once again. To my horror, John, my captor, rushed into the room. He did not seem to be moving like a human though. It was as if he was floating at the speed of sound, a plume of black smoke that traveled half of a mile in an instant. His body suddenly formed in front of me. "Where is he?" he screamed. "Where is who?" I responded. "That enemy of the order, Yura," he said, nearly choking when he pronounced the name. I suddenly noticed that John had a large gash on his chest and that his face was bloodied and bruised. The bodies of his guards littered the room. It was a massacre. There must have been 24 bodies scattered on the floor and in the rafters. Some were missing heads, some appeared to have been cut in half. Others were missing multiple limbs. All were clearly dead. There were pools of blood everywhere. The sight was almost mesmerizing, since the color of the blood matched perfectly with the flood of the red lights. "Wow, someone really fucked you clowns up, didn't they?" I said, while I laughed at him. "Big mistake." He picked me up above his head, clenching my throat with one hand. He was shaking violently and seemed to be trying to snap my neck. I could feel my life slipping away. But he couldn't kill me. It was as if some invisible force was stopping him from closing his hand completely. He threw me down hard and the cell suddenly formed back around me. Over the next few months, I gathered as much intel as I could while being tortured. The guards kept referring to something called the Order. I heard accents from every part of the world. I was starved and drugged repeatedly. They'd sit me in a chair every couple of hours, inject me with a drug, and then proceed to torture me. The drug somehow enabled them to hijack my mind and make me feel death over and over again. I couldn't feel their actions with my physical body, but my nerves responded to what my brain was registering, so the pain felt real. Just different than physical touch. In the simulator, they'd chop me up piece by piece, only for my body to reform again. They'd make me feel as if I was dropped in the ocean, daunted, and then eaten by great white sharks. They'd light me on fire and I'd have to feel my body melt and would hallucinate my skin and muscle falling from the bone. They'd take me to the top of a building, 1,000s of feet tall, and push me off the side. It'd take minutes for me to hit the ground. I secretly preferred this one. Those minutes were the most peace I got in this place. They made me relive my worst nightmare. In 2009, I was escorting a General 4 through Kabul one summer, when a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, VBID, narrowly missed my vehicle. The Al-Qaeda fighter managed to miss my convoy and blow up 80 Afghan civilians. I had to pull security while Afghans shoveled limbs, torsos, and hamburger meat off of the road. I can't think of a worse thing to see. And those bastards made me relive it every day. The worst by far, was when they'd simulate the giants that I killed. They'd taunt me and break my body slowly. I'd then have to watch them eat my body before I would awaken, and it'd start over again. I don't know why they let me go. They seemed to be on a timeline, and I heard the goon saying that there's no way I knew everything. He didn't break. No one could have withstood that. John ordered his men to strap me in a chair and told them to wipe my memory and implant a chip. If he knows anything, he'll lead us to them. Only one guard remained. He started to turn the machine on, then leaned forward, inches from my face. He pulled his balaclava up slightly, revealing what looked like an ash cross underneath. The kind Catholics put on for Lent. Whispering, he said, "I'm sorry, but you must remember everything. I trust you entirely." He then injected me with something and turned on the machine. I awoke in front of my home, in uniform, and 40 pounds lighter. Apparently, they told my wife and instructors that I'd been pulled for a special mission. My wife immediately knew something was wrong though. She embraced me tightly for what felt like hours and told me, "If you're ever ready to talk, I'll listen." I gave her an understanding look, which told her to never ask about what happened. That night, I awoke to LTC Williams standing at the foot of my bed. He said, "Well done, Ranger, I'm so proud of you. I've got a mission for you to relay to TFM and the warriors of the world. We're going to be fighting side by side soon." He put his hand on my forehead, and I could suddenly see armies converging towards somewhere in the Middle East. It looked like the entire world was getting ready to fight over one small piece of land. LTC Williams pointed up, and that's when I saw armies fighting above. On one side, there were hundreds of thousands of angels, with swords and shields or bows and arrows. All were glowing as brightly as Ura. It appeared as if humans were mixed within their ranks. Most appeared to be in the lead of elements of angels. They too were armed with golden swords or bows. They all marched in step, yelling something in a language I did not understand. The rhythm and language was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I heard a horn on the other side of the battlefield and saw a force of millions marching toward the angelic warriors. The enemy seemed to be led by angels. These angels looked much different though. They had black wings and their armor was all black. Green swords unsheathed. They were leading giants, grotesque beasts, and humans. They sounded a horn that elicited a great fear in me. They shouted obscenities that no human could imagine. The ground began to shake under my feet, as the sky turned to darkness, and the moon turned red. LTC Williams touched my head again, and I was back in my bed. He said, "Get them all ready. The fight is coming soon. All must choose a side. The true warriors of God will not end their fight in your world." He smiled and suddenly disappeared. My wife, lying beside me in bed, said that was LTC Williams. "But he's dead, isn't he?" I replied, "Yes, I held him during his final breaths and watched his body burn." I guess it's time that I tell you what I've truly been doing for the past 12 years. We're going to have to warn the world and pray that the true warriors come forward. It appears that his world and ours will both be at war soon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have any questions, advice, or suggestions, please leave them down in the comments section. Stay safe out there, Paranormal Archives.